This is Books for Breakfast, a podcast where we talk about books and writing. I'm Enda Wiley.
And I'm Peter Sirr.
And you're all very welcome to this morning's show. And on today's programme, we talk to Victoria Kennefick, acclaimed as one of the boldest poetic voices to emerge in recent years.
And backed by popular demand is the Toaster Challenge, so we look forward to seeing what Victoria has chosen.
Really looking forward to that. The Toaster Challenge is back, Peter, so I hope you've got the bread ready, the toaster ready. Everything will be ready for Victoria. So
we even have a new toaster.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. What kind?
Oh, it's a brilliant kind. It's a very expensive toaster. And
all of this lies ahead of you. So keep listening. This is going to be a really good Books for Breakfast.
Ram. It's on the kitchen table, the ram's skull. He came in cradling it in his arms. "Don't worry, it's been dead for ages," he whispered, then touched my cheek, a circuit forming between him, me, and the ram that flooded my body with crackling winter fire. He plonked the skull down before vanishing, as he does, into his head, and left this head, still on the wood, just bone and horns. And oh, what horns! I imagine his admirers' eyes, dark slits expanding to take them all in, the curve of them, looping, intentional things, rigid, strong. I can't look for long, can't reach out to touch them, though it's all I want to do. To be honest, I am scared of the narrow, brittle skull between two magnificent coronets, a sliver of bone, and in its empty sockets, a black blankness. It is the devil, no doubt, here on our kitchen table like a vase. It vibrates. I can almost hear its ancient bleats every time I make tea, load the dishwasher, stack plates. It is there. Weird exhibit. "I'll take it to show her," he says when he returns, meaning our 2-year-old who has been asking about bones, can smell death in the house. She runs in, her teething cheeks hot and red. "Mama, the baba doesn't need its head anymore." The three of us and the ram. Its presence a whisper from the future, stubborn, yes, and unapologetic. It's on the table even now. Tomorrow it will disappear to his laboratory, but tonight I can't stop thinking about those hollow orbs, the thin fragments of skull clinging together to give shape to an idea. Ram, silhouetted against all the objects, against all the light. Ram, who am I supposed to be in all this? The floral blinds, the recipe books, the porcelain floor tiles. Oh, Ram, let us bash our heads off them and weep.
And that was Victoria Kennefick reading Ram, which opens her new second collection, Egg Shell, just published by Carcanet Press. And we'll be talking more about that powerful poem later, but first about Victoria. Well, Victoria Kennefick made a big impact with her first collection of poems, Eat or We Both Starve, published by Carcanet in 2021, with poems that dealt with subjects like bereavement, sex, the female body, praised for their visceral originality. The title was an order from a concerned parent, and food plays a big part. A child's revulsion from meat, fasting, hunger strikes, famine. It may put you off your dinner, as one reviewer put it, but it comes at you with a great and gleefully unbridled spiritedness to be handled and read with some care. Eggshell is no less striking. It deals with motherhood, miscarriage, infertility, and a husband's gender transition. So, Victoria, we spoke to you before on Books for Breakfast when your first book came out. We were delighted to have you there, and we're delighted to have you back again to talk about Eggshell.
Thank you so much for having me. I had such a wonderful time the last time, so I'm really looking forward to the chat.
It's great to have you here.
Victoria, welcome back as to the breakfast table. And I was just wondering, you're in the middle of this whole big publicity cycle now that follows the publication of a book, you know, with readings and interviews, launches, not to mention podcasts. And I'm wondering, do you enjoy the public side of being a poet, and do you think it's important?
That is such a great question, and one I've been really thinking about lately, very, very much, because I think I think there are three aspects to being a poet, as I see it at the moment anyway. One is obviously the kind of very internal, very private, very weird and odd personality of being a poet, and how you notice things and observe things and process things and write them and create them. And it involves a certain level of disconnection and deep connection simultaneously that can make living a real ordinary, and I mean that in the greatest sense of the word, life quite challenging, because you've laundry to do, but equally you're thinking about the meaning of life simultaneously. So I find that really challenging but exciting. And then obviously once you've created this crazy mess of words and all of these feelings and experiences and things that you've noticed, you have to put on your editorial hat, and you have to try and be brutal and see what this creative part of yourself was trying to do, and try to bring that out more. And that's a totally different experience. And then there's like being pushed into the public sphere, and everyone going like, what did you mean? And you're so brave. And you're like, what? I don't intentionally try to be brave or anything, but I do think it is important, and I do enjoy huge aspects of it. I do enjoy reading poems very, very much. I do enjoy learning as I read them, because I always discover something new about the poem, or about myself, or about myself in relation to other people, as I'm reading. And I'm always interested in that being another version of the poem and another version of the book, and the choices I make around what poems I choose to read and the order in which I read them in. And I'm really interested in at the moment in how, this book is so intense and emotionally quite a journey, I suppose, as it was to write and to experience. But I'm so conscious of when there is silence in the room as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, now I need a funny poem, or now I need to make fun of myself, or now I need to cut that tension. And I'm really interested in the fact that I have to do that. I don't know how the audience is feeling, but I'm like sitting in this kind of discomfort around a longer poem, for example, which I've allowed myself to kind of write in this new book. And so I think I have an anxious relationship with that version of being a poet. I enjoy it when I'm there. The thought of it makes me sick. But I think we all share that level to different degrees, I think, of enjoyment and anxiety and excitement around it. I feel very lucky though. Very lucky.
No, that all rings true to me, Victoria, as well. But I heard you say that Eggshell is a double album with two distinct parts dealing with the issues that I mentioned earlier. And I'm just wondering, to what extent for you is the subject an important driver? Like, is that where you start as a poet? Is it the subject that's the primary trigger?
I think it's more of a feeling, like a kind of sneaky weather that kind of descends upon me. And, it has a certain quality of pressure, and it has a certain quality of precipitation. And I'm trying to kind of gauge what the weather of the book is, I think, or the weather of the poems that I'm interested in writing. And so I kind of start then to gather, I think imagery and symbol are kind of things that come first, that match the feeling. So swans in this case, egg, obviously eggs, and all of the various things that emerge from them, and the process of breaking them and how we use them. Easter as a kind of transformational and hopeful celebratory season. So I think it's almost like, yeah, the season and the texture, and then the symbols, and then over time I think they become containers for the experience and for the themes. Because I think if I'm too literal about the themes, that somehow kind of nails the poem to the floor before it even has a chance to take off. So I think the themes are almost nearly the last thing for me, I think,
Mm-hmm.
to emerge, or sometimes I don't even realize until after the poem is written what it's about, if I
Mm-hmm.
ever do.
We heard you read earlier, Victoria, from the very powerful poem Ram, with its ending, "Oh Ram, let us bash our heads off them and weep." And there's a real sense of disturbance about this poem, I think, isn't there? I'm also struck by the way the ram's presence is a whisper from the future, as you say. It's kind of like a sort of presentiment. And I was wondering, was that? I know it's in the first position. It's the first poem in the book. Was it the first poem that you actually wrote for this book?
It was one of the first poems that I wrote for this book. Yeah, I think it was. a kind of transitional poem between the last book and this new book. And it is a weird poem. It is a poem that it kind of scares me a little bit. As the ram skull did, which was really on my table. And there's a kind of matching poem towards the end of the book called Pelvis, which kind of echoes another part of that experience. But I'm really interested in how poems, for me, often have the kernel of the future planted within them. They're almost like prophecies or strange spells or talismans in some way. And so a few people have said, oh, you obviously knew what was coming in this poem. And I was like, no, I did not. So this poem was before a lot of the things that the book explores happened. But there was this, like I say, this weather or this tension or this sense that, oh, something's on the horizon. And this ram very much seemed like a symbol for that. And having had experienced coming across skulls and bones and ram's heads and various other guises, it almost seemed like a portent. So I think there is that, I suppose it's your subconscious, it's your dream part of your brain that is concocting all of these stories and noticing things that your logical brain mightn't be engaged with yet or isn't ready for. And it's almost like sometimes I think with poetry we can discover retrospectively what was actually going on before we logically or practically realized it.
Yeah, it's interesting how a poem can nearly direct you, and you didn't realise, but that is the direction you were supposed to go in. In your book, motherhood dominates the first half of the book, and there are really moving poems about your daughter. Like, I love the one about teaching her to break an egg. You say she hesitates, she who is told not to break, who is asked, did she break, or why did she break? So there's that sense of transgression there, I think, which I found very interesting. But the book also deals with secondary infertility. This morning, there was blood in the toilet water. I cannot seem to keep them in. You say in your poem, The Wild Swans at the Wetland Centre. And for me, the best of poetry, it works on different levels. And I think this poem is particularly a case in point. I have to say as well, as an aside, you mentioned swans. I love all the swans in the book, and I love the quote at the beginning. I fell in love with the swan. My eyes were filled with feathers. Oh, so beautiful. But might you talk a little bit, Victoria, about this poem, The Wild Swans at the Wetland Centre? And it would be nice if you could read it for us as well. That would be lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I think motherhood, it was such a shock to me and remains a shock to me. I still grapple with what it means and the fact that I'm a mother, which I'm very lucky and grateful and delighted to be. But the responsibility of it is extraordinary, and it is something that constantly reminds one of one's own mortality and movement up the chain, the chronological chain, and even seeing, I think, aspects of previous family members that have departed this realm in this new person. It's a really uncanny experience sometimes. So this poem is a bit naughty in a way because I've always loved Yeats and have had a very difficult love-hate relationship with him in many ways, as I think many poets in Ireland have and beyond. And I always loved The Wild Swans at Cool. And during the lockdown and during these experiences of secondary infertility, I found myself with my daughter going around the local amenity, which is this lovely lake just across the road from us, and watching these swans. And I was kind of thinking about Yeats and thinking about his experience of watching the swans and his experience of time and his experience of mortality, and thinking how different it is in many respects from maybe having a woman's body just by chance, and how that is maybe slightly different or alters one's perspective maybe on what bodies do and what pairing and loss means maybe. So I decided to write my own version of it. And it is, I suppose, it is a poem very much around loss and around time. And I suppose that sense of having everything and yet still wanting more in some senses. So I'd be delighted to read it for you now. The Wild Swans at the Wetland Centre. Just one swan, her perfect twin floating beneath, a trick. She dips her beak into herself, hoping not to meet water, but the soft plumage of another. The incident described in detail by the centre staff, how her partner fell from the sky, crashed into the path, a mess, brains, blood, feathers, screams, a quick clean-up. I wish I had been there. It is so colourless some days. Bereft and haunted, she lollops up the rocks to her island nest, gathers her neck into a sleeping S. We visit often. There is nothing else to do. Until one day, there are two. Her new partner has a strong, plump body, an insistent beak. He is very protective. We watch them for weeks. You scoot around the lake ahead of me, delighted by your newfound autonomy. Come spring and your birthday, they assemble an untidy heap of reeds and grass close to the water's edge, a present. The cob sits on the nest guarding the precious orbs while she feeds in cold water by the pedal boats, then incubates. She almost never leaves them. This morning there was blood in the toilet water. I cannot seem to keep them. The cob hisses at toddlers and a knobbly-kneed man. We worry, what if there is a flood or mink attack or that pointy heron standing sentry-like on the bridge gets hungry? I'm afraid of what has happened. The swan's necks droop low. We watch our own water selves tag along until one day she's left the nest. No downy fluff, no little brood, nothing. I have nothing to show, kneeling at the lip of the lake alone in the evening, wringing my hands. I touch its cold body. They approach. We split on liquid, become part of each other, while broken slithers of streetlight and moon, unreachable in monochrome, repeat themselves over and over us and onto the water.
Thanks very much, Victoria. Poetry, I mean, it's clearly it's a very personal space for you. I mean, it's a very strong sense that it's coming directly from the life, and that it's written in the heat of the moment, almost, and with the emotions still very much fresh, our own. I mean, that may not. I mean, I just wonder, is that the case, or is it kind of recollected a lot later in tranquility or not tranquility? But
Oh, so rarely is there ever tranquility.
yeah.
Which I think is a lot of why I write, and why what motivates me is searching for those answers. Or I think it is very personal, and I think I've really tried to move away from that and avoid that, and it really is, because I think my project is very much exploring what it means to be human, and I just happen to be this human, so I'm exploring all of the aspects of what that is, and finding it very confusing and very exciting and exhilarating and traumatic and surprising and all of those things. And I think I have this great need to communicate those feelings and those emotions, and share them. And I think poetry is at least a place where I can organize them and craft them into something that is useful and maybe helpful to readers in trying to understand from their perspective what it might mean for them to be human, and to maybe feel like in those very difficult emotions and those very existential experiences that I think we all share at different times, that you're not alone in it. You're not weird, you're not odd, you're not disconnected, because I think that's something that we all have a tendency to feel. And I think that leads to a lot of difficulties in terms of our mental and physical well-being, that through reading poetry, and certainly for me, it has proven to be a way of in some way soothing that. I find it quite soothing. So while I think the poems are definitely written in the heat of the moment, I'm very much trying to absolutely contain that moment. I spend a lot of time afterwards cooling it down, maybe, and making it more palatable to the reader, and for myself. So I do, like, I suppose, build in a certain level of distance. So on one level it looks like I'm being incredibly open and incredibly honest, which I am, but equally there's a boundary there where I'm kind of hiding behind and going, here's the poem, don't come any further though. Which is fun. I enjoy that kind of tension and risk as well, because it is risky.
Talking about the personal and its presence in your poetry, I was wondering, could you read Census Night poem for us?
I would love to. I find Census Night really emotional. And particularly this last one, I suppose, because the shape and texture and quality of what my family is had changed. And I didn't really know how to fill in the census form. And I thought about all the other families, and particularly, I suppose, given that we're speaking just after the referendum, and what that means in terms of what a family is. And so I just wrote this poem in response to those kind of complex feelings. Census Night poem. I cry every time. I am so small. We are all so small, and tonight we know it. Don't you want to run barefoot in your dressing gown into your neighbour's house and say, "Hello, I love you. Here we are on this rock together. Hold my hand. Hold me. I want to write down the names of all my dead relatives. How are they not here anymore? How are yours absent too? What do we do with them? Their names. Is there a box for grief?"
Oh, Victoria, that's great. Is there a box for grief? That's a great line. Reading the book, I was really intrigued by the variety of forms that you use. There are poems in shapes, there's prose poems, there's one-line poems, there's a verification page with a CAPTCHA to prove you're not a robot. Select all images with crosswalks. You also have poems with titles like Vault of Obsolete Pronouns and Defunct Descriptors, which has 3 words: husband, he and his, and they're repeatedly struck through. Are you conscious of wanting to make it new, to try out all these different ways of expressing experience?
I think that is a really exciting part of being a poet. I think that's something that really motivates me and thrills me. And there's a kind of discovery in it that feels very, very energizing when you're writing it, and equally, I think, hopefully, when you're reading it on the page. And I am somebody, I suppose, I've learned about myself that if I'm given a restriction, I reject it. But if I make my own restriction, I enjoy it. So there's something around, again, playing with that notion of boundaries, what you allow to be expressed and what you don't, what you allow the white space to hide or to reveal. And I think that's something that I'm always in negotiation with and always in discussion with, is like, how much do I reveal? In what way do I reveal it? How much do I let a reader in? How much do I let myself out? How comfortable is that? And is there a different way of doing it with less words or with different shapes? And I think sometimes even seeing a different shape on the page before you even read the text at all or engage with it, it does something to your brain. It changes the way that you interpret information. And I think sometimes it's like a sneaky shortcut into a different feeling or a different experience. I'm always interested in that experimentation. And I think even more so with this book than in the previous one, I allowed myself a little bit more freedom. I also had an ADHD diagnosis when I was writing this book. And I do think having that confirmation, it kind of gave me a bit of more permission to go, oh, well, okay, I'm just gonna go a bit further now. Yeah, let my brain, like, really map out my brain a little bit more, which was very liberating, actually.
Go wild. Yeah, it sounds great. Peter, you had another question, didn't you, that you want to ask Victoria?
Sort of relates to that in a way. I mean, just to go back to what Enda was saying about that poem with the 3 kind of deleted descriptors. I mean, obviously, you're right. You're writing about your husband's gender transformation, and that takes up the second part of the book. And it's very much that kind of, we see the situation, and I suppose we see it rather than the human figure or figures involved. And I was wondering, like, it's hard to hurt and then explain the hurt away so as not to hurt anyone. But have you seen my life, you say, for instance, in Child of Lear? And I was wondering, are there limits to what can be said in a kind of confessional mode? Is there a sense that you have to protect the people that you're writing about?
That, for me, yes. I think that's a huge responsibility and something that I am still learning and engaging with. And I think it comes back to form, and I think it comes back to symbol, and I think it comes back to experimentation as well, and how you choose to talk about these subjects and talk about these experiences. Because I guess, like, my former spouse coming out as she did really changed my brain. Like, it massively, my brain had to do a huge amount of work, and still does, in order to, like, reconfigure my life, reconfigure how I relate to this person, who they are. The neuroplasticity of my brain was massively tested. I had to retrain it. And that's what really interested me. I think that, I think Child of Lear is probably the poem where the experience, and maybe a poem in which I wear Emily Dickinson's dress instead, those 2 poems kind of really explore maybe the kind of more painful aspects of the separation and of what the transition meant in terms of my identity as a wife and my identity as somebody who was heterosexual and married to a man, as I thought, And that very difficult renegotiation of those terms for myself, which wasn't easy at all, but poetry really helped. And I suppose I was very conscious of the fact that, you know, my co-parents' experience and her transition is her experience and her story to share. And so I was very, very cognizant of keeping the focus always on what was happening to me and what was going on for me, because I do think that's an important aspect of transition, of every kind of transition, no matter who is changing and how they're changing, if it's you or if it's your partner or your child, or, you know, if there's a loss or a gain, huge things happen. And I think looking at how that process occurs over time is really helpful and useful. And it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be angry, and it's okay to grieve, and that doesn't in any way lessen the beautiful transformation of somebody becoming more themselves. It doesn't impact on your belief that that is the right thing for that person, and that is, you know, a beautiful positive thing. But of course it's going to require adjustment and difficulty for everybody, including that person. And I think I think all of those transitions are much more complex and nuanced than we see in the media and see in the world around us. And I think when people understand and are allowed to talk about the nuance, because it's okay, you know, it's like having, you know, having a baby is a massive transition and change. It's joyful and amazing, but it's the hardest thing in the world. So, you know, you're allowed to have those feelings. All of them are valid. And I think I really felt that that was what my role was in this book, is to kind of say it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to be uncomfortable, and it's okay to grieve, and it's okay to be in this kind of liminal space of not knowing where you are, where you're going, or what you're going to do. It's okay. It's part of the whole journey. So that's what I think a lot of my focus is on that. And I'm much more conscious now of writing about my daughter, and I don't think I will be writing about my daughter more now that she's older and more conscious. Um,
Yeah,
so
because I mean, in our house anyway, you get murdered if you do that. It's not allowed. Not allowed.
yeah, yeah. And they'll get their own back somehow. They really will. Like, one of my fears is that she'll either be a poet or a stand-up comedian. It's like
Probably a stand-up comedian. But
I'm worried.
no, but it really is a collection of great emotional complexity and honesty, Victoria. Though, even just listening to you there, you mentioned a poem in which I wish I wore Emily Dickinson's dress instead. So will you read that for us now? And it kind of, I think, really gives voice to everything you were saying there.
Poem in which I wish I wore Emily Dickinson's dress instead. It was silk, fluid as a promise, cascading down my body, a dream in cream. Emily. They were mother of pearl tablets ringing the neckline that shimmered and glowed opaquely. Classy, you see. I thought I was a bride. There was a veil with a train that flowed and followed me, loyal and persistent down the aisle, its net gathering, gathering. Did I tell you I thought I was a bride? Even my heart was pearl coloured, an oyster's gift pried open and bare, bloodless, but what a mess. It turns out, Emily, it was a ghost's gown, a dead poet's garb, because all I can do is write about it as it whispers vows from the dark wardrobe in the next room. I can't bear to look at it. My own little haunting, my own dead costume.
Victoria Kennefick, many thanks for coming in to talk to us about your new collection, Egg Shell, which has just been published by Carcanet. So that was lovely to chat, Victoria.
Yeah, it was really great. And now, Victoria, on to the Toaster Challenge, where we ask a guest, the famous Toaster Challenge, to talk about a book or a poem that they love for as long as it takes to make a slice of toast. I know everybody's been asking us to bring this back, so it's great that you're the first person to do it, Victoria, in this new season. We haven't done it in a while. So, Victoria, I know that you've chosen a very special book where myth and nature collide, and there are swans there too. So we have the toast ready. Peter, you have it ready there, and we're going to count you in 1, 2, 3, and off you go, Victoria.
The book that I've chosen is Falling Awake by Alice Oswald, which was published by Jonathan Cape in 2016. And as you said, and she's a nature poet, really, but I also think poet of the body, and very much how the body interacts with the world around it, and exploring both the external and internal landscapes, particularly through her interest in gardening and in nature and the impact we have as humans on the natural world around us, but also through the exploration of myth and legend. And I was really intrigued by the title. I think that's what grabbed me in the first instance, because I was really interested in the idea of falling awake and the idea of falling. And it's something that I was thinking about when I was writing Eggshell, about falling asleep, how we have to give into those kind of unconscious drives that support us and ensure our survival, like falling in love equally. And so that notion of surrender, I think, is a very central project to this book, and indeed to Alice Oswald's books in general. And I think something that I am becoming more and more interested in. And she also talks about, or explores in the book, the whole notion of patience. And I think that's something that, as a gardener and as a nature poet, that she very much is interested in, and particularly in silence. And I'm really interested in the way that she uses white space in the poem. She says that it is a neurotically measured and metered book. And as somebody who, is fascinated by structure but equally rebels against it, I was really interested in that notion of how she contains and controls wildness, and how she measures out time in a very particular way, and looks, I suppose, at dying as a transformational and transitional experience. And I suppose, again, that's something as a poet I'm really fascinated by, are those kind of transitions, even between being hungry and sated, between being awake and asleep, between being alert and maybe daydreaming, and particularly obviously being alive and being dead, and how we don't know what that feels like. And yet she constantly touches off that kind of experience and looks at it, I think, as the beginning of something else. So she calls her poems sound carvings, and talks about them as cycles. And I think my favorite poem in the whole collection is Swan, and that was something that very much inspired a few of my poems. The opening line is, "A rotted swan is hurrying away from the plane crash mess of her wings." And the whole poem really explores that interaction between nature and the human world, and how we are at once part of it and also at odds with it, and equally looking at the body as a place of transformation and change, a place of a home, but also a place that we seem to constantly want to escape from. So I learned a huge amount from this book, and I'm fascinated by her as a poet in the way that she inspires and delights and challenges me, because I think we're so different, but also share a lot in terms of our interest in symbol and in those kind of liminal spaces.
Well done, Victoria. And the toast.
Oh, that's a perfect slice of toast.
Toast. No, I love Alice Oswald as well. And I love, she loves Ted Hughes actually as well. She
Yes.
greatly inspired by her.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a YouTube video of her talking so passionately about Hughes. So I love that she has this passion about things as well.
Yes,
but it was great to hear you talking there in that poem, Swan. It's so beautiful, which ends, you began it there, but there's a lovely bit where she says, "And lifting away again and bending back for another look, thinking, strange. The shape of the poem is beautiful as well, I think, Victoria. So yeah, definitely I can see why she would have influenced you. You said that poetry has saved my life. It's made my life. Reading and writing it have taught me bravery and honesty. And it's been great to speak to you today and hear your brave exuberance. And it certainly seems to be the case that Alice Oswald has inspired you in this way. So many thanks for coming in and talking to us so enthusiastically about Alice Oswald.
Indeed. Thanks, Victoria, for coming in, and all the best with Eggshell, your new collection, with Carcanet, and also talking about Alice Oswald's 7th collection, Falling Awake, which was published in 2016 by Jonathan Cape. And as always, information about all the books discussed today will be available on our podcast site, which is booksforbreakfast.buzzsprout.com.
I think we've reached the end of our Books for Breakfast podcast this morning. I'm definitely rushing off to have more coffee. And I'm Enda Wiley, and I have Peter Sirr here with me. And Peter, would you like to tell everyone about the details of the podcast if they'd like to listen again?
Well, you can subscribe at all the usual sources, Google and Apple and so on. And if you want to check out the notes that go along with this podcast, you can go to booksforbreakfast.buzzsprout.com. And yeah, so
we'll be back again. We'll have the toast on, we'll have the kettle boiling, we will have more books to discuss, and we're looking forward to having you here. So goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.